Why does detachment happen so quietly? Why do people you once loved become strangers while they're still sitting right next to you? When did you stop feeling what you used to feel? And why didn't anyone notice, including you? There's a particular kind of loneliness that comes from slowly cutting people out inside while your face still smiles at them. A silent amputation happening in your heart while your mouth still says, "I'm fine." Science is discovering that emotional detachment isn't sudden. It's a gradual dimming, so subtle you don't realize you've gone dark until someone who used to matter doesn't anymore. And what psychologists are finding might explain why you're surrounded by people yet feel completely alone. Why does your heart close while your life stays the same? Psychologists describe this as internal relational withdrawal and emotional numbing. It's not about conflict or betrayal. It's about something quieter, your nervous system deciding that feeling less is safer than feeling everything. Researchers studying emotional regulation find that some people protect themselves not by leaving relationships, but by leaving them emotionally while physically staying. When did you stop caring? Was it gradual, or did you just wake up one day and realize the people who used to move you now barely register? What happens in the brain when it decides to stop investing in connections that still technically exist? Here's the paradox that creates silent suffering. You're physically present, but emotionally absent. You respond to texts, but feel nothing. You attend gatherings, but you're not really there. You maintain relationships while simultaneously abandoning them internally. And nobody knows, not even you sometimes, until you realize you've been performing connection while feeling none of it. When have you caught yourself pretending to care about something someone's telling you, going through the motions of friendship while feeling completely hollow inside? Why does this internal cutting out feel both necessary and devastating? Because you're protecting yourself and losing yourself simultaneously. We live in a culture that recognizes dramatic endings, breakups, blow-ups, final goodbyes. But what about the people who slowly cut others out internally without ever saying a word? They get called fake, emotionally unavailable, checked out. But what if this quiet withdrawal isn't manipulation, it's survival? Scientists studying emotional exhaustion find that internal detachment often precedes physical departure. It's the heart leaving before the body knows how. When will we acknowledge that some people disconnect slowly because explosive endings feel more dangerous than gradual fading? Why does society demand you either stay fully invested or leave completely, as if there's no middle ground of self-protection? When does this pattern begin? Often after repeated disappointment. Maybe they invested fully in friendships that didn't reciprocate, where they showed up completely and others showed up partially. So their heart learned, stop giving everything because you get back nothing. Or perhaps they experienced betrayal that taught them closeness equals inevitable pain, where opening up meant getting hurt. Over time, their system developed a different strategy. Don't leave the relationships, just leave them emotionally. Stay connected on the surface while disconnecting underneath. When did protection become their default? When did they learn that caring less hurts less, even though it also means living less? But here's what most people miss. People who slowly cut others out inside often possess profound self-awareness about their own capacity. They know they can't sustain emotional investment they once could. They recognize when they're operating from obligation rather than genuine connection. Their internal detachment isn't coldness, it's honesty their mouth hasn't caught up to yet. Research on emotional boundaries shows that internal detachment can be adaptive when external detachment isn't possible. But when does self-protection become self-imprisonment? When you've cut out so many people internally that you're surrounded by relationships that exist in form, not feeling. Psychologists call it the phantom relationship syndrome. It begins when maintaining appearances feels easier than having difficult conversations. You smile at people you've already said goodbye to in your heart. You celebrate birthdays for people whose happiness you stopped genuinely caring about months ago. The gap between your internal reality and external performance widens. Why is this exhausting? Because you're living a double life, one where everyone thinks you're connected, another where you're profoundly isolated. When does performing connection become more painful than admitting disconnection? When the energy required to fake it exceeds the discomfort of being honest. Why did humans evolve this capacity for internal detachment? Because sometimes leaving physically meant danger, ostracization from tribe, loss of resources, social death. So the psyche developed a workaround: leave emotionally while staying physically. Protect your heart while maintaining your position. It's not modern dysfunction, it's ancient adaptation for surviving relationships you can't afford to exit. When modern life no longer requires staying in harmful relationships, why do we still use this strategy? Because the wiring remains. When confrontation feels impossible, when honesty feels too risky, when maintaining peace matters more than maintaining authenticity, you cut people out inside where they'll never see the blade. When can you be honest instead of hollow? The path forward isn't forcing yourself to feel what you don't or staying in relationships that deplete you. It's learning to recognize internal detachment as information, not inevitability. That might mean asking, am I detaching because this relationship is genuinely harmful or because I'm afraid of the vulnerability required to stay connected? Why do you pull away internally? Is it self-protection or self-sabotage? When the answer is protection, honor it. When it's fear of intimacy, address it. The goal isn't staying emotionally invested in everyone. It's making conscious choices about who gets your heart instead of letting your nervous system make those choices automatically. Why does cutting people out inside hurt even when you're the one doing it? Because somewhere underneath the numbness, you remember what it felt like to care. You remember when these people mattered. Psychologists studying grief explain that internal detachment is a form of anticipatory loss. You're mourning connections that haven't officially ended yet. When you slowly cut someone out inside, you're not just protecting yourself from future pain, you're grieving the relationship that was, the person you were when you still felt something. Why does nobody talk about this quiet heartbreak? Because it looks like indifference when it's actually profound sadness that learned to stop showing itself. Here's what others never see. When someone is slowly cutting you out inside, it's not because you're not enough. It's because they've learned that feeling everything means hurting constantly, and they chose numbness over agony. Their detachment isn't personal rejection, it's impersonal protection. They're not leaving you specifically, they're leaving feeling itself. When you realize someone has cut you out internally while still showing up physically, why does it hurt more than if they just left? Because you've been loving a ghost. Because the relationship died, but nobody held a funeral. Because you kept investing in something that stopped existing. People who slowly cut others out inside aren't heartless or manipulative. They're hurting in a way that's learned to hurt quietly. They've discovered that the pain of disconnection is more bearable than the pain of connection when connection keeps wounding them. When they finally stop performing and start being honest, either by leaving or by rekindling genuine feeling, it's not cruelty, it's consciousness. The quiet pain of slowly cutting people out inside isn't about the people you're cutting out. It's about the part of yourself that dies a little each time you choose numbness over feeling. Why do you do it? Because sometimes surviving requires dimming your heart. When will you know if you've dimmed it so much you can't turn the light back on? That's the question that should terrify and motivate you in equal measure.